Hey, this is Kieran, Coach's Corner Chats, and on the podcast today I have Cody Coley. Cody, where are you at and what are you up to?
I'm the head strength and conditioning coach at Solon High School, which is outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I'm also technically like the assistant AD or assistant to the AD, just something that I do to help the athletic department. But mostly my main priority is to be the strength coach for all the athletics here at Solon High School.
And what's the size of Solon? Kind of a small high school, large?
Oh yeah, so Solon's Division One, just like say Middletown or we're the GCC. You guys down there are the GMC. So big. It's a big high school, but kind of interesting similarity to like being at Middletown was. We're in these big divisions, but we're smaller schools inside of those divisions. So where Mason has all these numbers, Menor, who we deal with a lot, have a large number of kids to choose from. We have kind of a select population, so you kind of got to fine tune what you do with them, so that way you make them the best that they can be.
So what are some of the obstacles that come across in terms, does that mean you have guys that play multiple sports rather than just a specific sport?
Yeah, tons. I mean, that's probably the biggest challenge is you have everybody's a multi-sport athlete. They play across the boundary. So as a strength coach, especially like football, I mean, I don't have a couple handfuls of kids that are just football players. Everybody else is either playing running track, playing lacrosse, or playing baseball. So I mean, you have to. They still need to train. They still need to be prepared whenever we get to the summer, because we're going to train and we got to get ready for the football season. So if we're talking about football, but they're not in a consolidated football off season. They have to get what they do in season from spring, which can be a challenge in its own right, because you got events, you got practices and scrimmages and games, and so definitely that's an interesting challenge to try to work through.
What were some of the things when you came into to that high school that you wanted to put in place to kind of get people to buy in?
Ooh, well, so the previous strength coach, everybody has their own way of doing business. I mean, I'm a very disciplined and organized person. If it's not that way, I get a little twitchy. And so, one of the things that they did was they would all kind of hodgepodge in there in inside of like 3 to 5 o'clock. And I think there were some teams that would train in the morning. And that just didn't seem like it was the most effective process, because talking with some of our athletes, some of our young ladies, like when they were in there were boys in there, and some were working and some weren't. And so, not everybody was held accountable to the process. Like they were in there. If you wanted to work, you worked. If you didn't, you didn't, but you were in there. And it don't work that way with me. You don't get an option. When you're in there, you work, non-negotiable. And you do it the way we're asking you to do it. And so, I think that changed it. So when I went there, I had to give them blocks, and I ran it kind of like how I did it at every other high school, where you run it kind of like you do at college. There's a time slot scheduled, and when soccer's in there, that's soccer's time block, and we're going to focus on what that team needs mentally and physically to be better, which I play off of talking to the coaches. And you should have a pretty good open dialogue with what you see as a coach to say, Coach, we don't do X, Y, and Z real well, and then mentally we need to be a little tougher. All right, well, we're going to hyper focus on all the things that you do to create a good strength program for a high school kid, because it's general stuff, but we're going to focus on those key things that you just brought to my attention too. So when I got there, I had to have a way to put them in those blocks and build that culture. And Solon's interesting because the academic standard of Solon is so pristine. Like it's the number one academic school the last 12 consecutive years. We have an outstanding principal, and she's a hammer. Like she's about her business, and you're going to do it this way, but she's she's about her people. She just wants it done a certain way. And that's how I am, like 100% all about that. And you see the success of it, right? So you have these kids that are like competing for these numbers, because that's what academics is. I want to be the top in the class. Well, that's all well and all, but when you push them over to a team sport, that becomes still their mentality. I got to focus on what I got to do. Well, a team sport is I got to focus on helping you be better. Compete means strive to get better together. So I see a lot of this when I first got here, where kids were kind of like, I'm a different personality. I got a little draw to how I talk, and uh, they probably think I'm a little crazy, and that's okay. But they're kind of like off put a little bit, like they're like, what's going on here? But they also don't know they didn't really understand how to like push each other. They didn't want to be too confrontational. And we're kind of pulling that out little by little, where my philosophy is when you're in the weight room and if it's me and you working out, my number one objective is to make you better. Now I'm going to give relentless effort, and I'm going to be unshakable in my belief of what I'm about to do. So I'm going to just bring that foundation to the table for myself, but I am only focused on you. So if you're my partner and we're doing pull-ups, I'm going to push you to get, if you start to fatigue at 8, I'm going to push you to get 2 more. You're going to get 10. Then you're going to step down, and your number job is to make me better. So you're going to say, hey man, I got 10, you got to get 11. And that's what we do. That's our process. And when they get to where they believe in that process, now you got a team that's connected and always wants to push each other to be the better version of themselves. They're not like thinking about me, they're thinking about us. And I just everywhere I've been where I've seen success, or if you pay attention to teams that are really successful, what you hear is that they're super connected. And you get this kind of this feeling that they're very selfless. It's kind of like being in a family. That's why a lot of people use that acronym family. Forget about me, I love you. I think Coach Donnie down there uses that. It's a great acronym, right? But do you embody that, or you just say that? So when we're in the weight room, I felt like when I first got there, just my thought process is we got to bring everybody together. So I use the phrase all in, and that means if soccer's playing, football's going to go watch them. If lacrosse is playing, baseball's going to go watch them. If football's playing, everybody's in the stands. And we have one central mission. That is, whenever the Comets are playing in something, we all feel the pain if we don't win. And when the Comets are playing in something, we all want to drive that culture to be better. I have always been a person that I want to build a culture that people fear playing. If they see the team that I work for on their schedule, they go, man, we got to play those guys. Yeah, you do. Hope you're ready. And that's my mentality. So, and that takes a little bit of time, but it takes everybody around kind of wanting to have that mentality, and that too tends to be a little bit of a challenge.
The one thing that I love is it's almost like you're trying to make them comfortable being uncomfortable, because at some point, within their game, whatever sport it is, there's going to be moments where you're just going to have to dig deep, and knowing that you've pushed that extra rep or that extra hold in like a plank or whatever it might be, bodes well in the athletic contest.
Right.
So you've talked about kind of numerous little stops in the high school. What is your where have you been prior to now being at Solon?
Well, I started out in Memphis, Tennessee, just working in inner city schools in Memphis, Tennessee. Then I came to Middletown and got to work with the kids there. And then I went to the University of Notre Dame and worked with football. And I came back and kind of stopped in Cincinnati, but we ended up working for Ohio State. But I did what was kind of called like a contract role, where I was employed by Ohio State, and I worked for a guy, the sports performance director, that was on the side of Wexner Medical Center. So you know how like you would contract your athletic trainers through whatever it is, Premier Health or whatever is down there. Well, we were just Ohio State. So we were hired by the standard of Ohio State, and then we got contracted to a school. And then the opportunity for Solon came about. And talking to people in my circle that are strength coaches that have done this a while, they said that's an opportunity to check into. And so far, it seems to be pretty, it's working out pretty well for now. So we'll see what happens. Good. It's a good school. You got really good kids that just need they need a little edge through in their life, and because they're going to do great things. That's the way I see it. Like every kid you deal with, they're basically a ship, right? When I look at a person as a ship at sea. If we're coaches, we're like the wave. If we're a weak wave, we don't change the course of the ship. But if we're a strong wave, we can move that ship where we want that ship, or where we want that ship, help that ship go, right? So I look at like the Solon kids, they're very strong rooted in what direction they're going to go, because they're so cerebral about things. So I know that just being academically smart is going to get you so far, but there's going to be a point, like you mentioned a while ago, where you're going to be in the middle of that dog fight, and you got to know, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone and I'm going to keep moving. And I'm going to hold fast and stay true to what the plan is. And they just need that little bit of like butt kicking every once in a while to know that, all right, I got this piece, but do I got this piece? And so that makes for an interesting stop so far.
One of the things too that I hear a bit is that this new generation of kids is like mentally weak and can't handle. Did you find that it was difficult, like your style of like, I'm in your face, my expectations are high, I'm going to find you accountable, I'm energetic, like I'm in this, we're not going to waste time when you're in the gym with me. How did the kids, as you said, they're very like strong academically, how did it take them some time to get used to, or are they still processing and working through that?
Well, first and foremost, I think that that's an adult's cop out, that kids are a different generation. Well, they are what we have tolerated them to be and what we've allowed them to be. I've not been at any school from inner city Memphis to Middletown to Solon where, yeah, they may go home to a different environment, but there's not been one school where they didn't meet the demand. Like at Solon, I got to where they had to stay behind a line before they could come in the weight room. And I have work that they have to do when they first get in there to teach them, kind of like the high school kid wants you to lead them in the process. They're kind of like on autopilot mode, and they come in there and they want you to, you're like, hey, go do this, go work on your footwork, go do this. Like, no. When you get there, you have something you need to do. You need to take initiative. And not only do you need to do it, you need to do it the right way. It's not what we do, it's how we do it. So I don't think that's a thing, like where the kids are kind of like, they just never, if they haven't had it and they haven't been held to that standard, then they don't know it. They're teenagers. They're not grown-ups. And even us grown-ups are still learning every day. I am. Sometimes I feel like a one-legged cat in a sandbox. I'm just working. But they will do what you ask them to do when you ask them to do it, the way you ask them to do it. But sometimes you have to explain it a little bit more. Sometimes you got to break it down to them a little bit. But again, I don't have that problem with a lot of the kids. Now, they are a little bit different, as far as like, energy and excitement. I do a lot where lately I've been doing at the end of the day, we end with something fun or competitive. I always say, like, you do three things. You either end the day with something competitive, something to unite the team, or something that's tough. And I've just been kind of focused on fun and competitive lately. And so we do rock, paper, scissors. It's a very intense series of rock, paper, scissors going on where everybody pairs up and the loser has to go do burpees all the way down until we get two kids and we get them in the middle of the weight room and we put everybody else around them. And then there's a big stake on the line. Like the losing, like you pick what kid you're going to go for. The team that loses has got to go do like X amount of burpees or got to go do lunges for so far. So we try to amp the stakes up, and they'll be out there throwing these rock, paper, scissors, and it'll go, I got to do best of 7 in the final round. And you'll go like 2-0, and then the kid will rally back 2-2. And then you'll go like 3-3, and then somebody wins and they like go crazy. There are times when they're like, that's a very exciting environment, but like their mentality at Solon sometimes can be like, they're very reserved. So they don't get naturally as enthusiastic. So you got to get them in the right moment. Different teams are different. Like that's just the cool thing about if you're a strength coach and you work with multiple teams. Some teams have that, they're just hyper. Like they like that enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And then some of them are just kind of like, whatever. They're just like playing chess or something. Like, come on, man, what are you doing there? Get excited. So, that's been kind of an interesting piece, as far as their temperaments is like, I say stuff and I get pretty edgy, if you will. And like, if I would have said certain things to kids at Middletown or the last stop, man, they get like kind of like possessed looking. Or sometimes I may say things to kids here where they're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Because I mean, again, some of it is if you come from a harder heart, like a more, like I've come through a lot of struggle. If you don't know a lot of struggle, then you don't quite understand the need to be ruthless in certain scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these kids have had their own hardships, but have they had real struggle? I mean, everybody's had something that they constitute as struggle, but to what degree? And to what degree do you ball your fist up and say, it don't stop me from moving forward? So that's different. But again, nothing bad there. It's just different. Just you got to be a coach that goes, all right, I'm still going to get to this end result of I want them to be, a no mercy, try to dominate the day team. That might not always get on. Let's find another way.
I love the idea of, and your example of like going from Memphis inner city to Middletown to now at Solon, the different levels of what adversity looks like in these kids' eyes and what they've dealt with. And I love the fact that your recognition of at each stop, you knew what you were dealing with had they were bringing something different to the table. So you clearly have an understanding of what the student athletes that are at Solon right now versus at Middletown versus at Memphis, even when you're at Notre Dame with them. The other thing, have you found that like for me at Middletown last year was really just getting them to understand what it meant to compete. Like it's fine to show up and play, but this Middletown right now is in a state of like we're kind of at the bottom of the GMC ladder. And
Right.
so it's like expected that, you brought up Mason earlier, or a Sycamore or the Lakotas. Do you see similar things with Solon? So now they've started to figure out like, man, what's it mean to be held accountable and an expectation put on us? And now what's it look like when we get on the field and we do actually have to compete and play at a high level?
See, Solon's different. It's funny how many similarities Solon has to Middletown, but how it's through a different lens. Like when I was at Middletown, you have all the tools, you have the resources, like you have the facilities. It's non-negotiable there. You got the kids, you just got to develop them, right? But there's, like you said, there was that, man, whenever you're kind of the bottom of the totem pole for so long, or you kind of go into this run, you got to break some really bad habits. Like that didn't happen just because it just happened. It happened for reasons that maybe we looked at a lot of while when you're not doing something like, well, we want to go win this conference championship. Well, the response immediately coming back from people that have a lower cultural standard is why it's not going to happen. Oh, well, we don't got the kids they got, or we don't got this. I don't want to know why it's not going to happen. I want to know, are you willing to put the amount of action that needs to be required to do it? And then are we going to hold people accountable to that standard? If your answer is you just need to be honest, yes or no. If it's no, let's move on. It's not going to happen, and we'll dwell where we are. Solon has had a good amount of success athletically too. I mean, they're good athletically. They're not a team that struggles. They have mental struggles, whether we want to be accountable to it or not. Like we have moments in a lot of our sports where I watched where we're on it. We're on it. They're sharp. They pick it up. They do it. They're on it, and then they'll turn it off, and then they'll be back on it. When they're on, they're hard to beat, but they turn it on and they turn it off. That's a mental toughness piece too. Like you have to stay on it. Some of that's ruthlessness, that competitive nature, just to be like, I'm not trying to beat them. I'm trying to do things to our standard. And that standard is to be no mercy, like all gas, no break, all the time. And that takes a lot of mental energy to think that way. So, for them, theirs is just like, we want to be the mountain, and we got to work really hard in a very particular way to be that mountain, because our competition is not somebody that you just brush off. And then I throw a lot of smoke at other schools. Like when I got to Solon, they had these big red exercise balls in the weight room. Well, Mentor's red, and in my eyes, Mentor is the mountain. I'll give them respect. They're a good team. Solon's beat them at various sports, but for the most part, they have earned that right. But I don't care. I don't care what they are. I know what we want to be, and I know that if you stand in our way, that's just part of your process that you got to deal with. And so red exercise balls are not allowed in the weight room, and neither is wearing red. So you can't wear red in the weight room. And minus my better judgment, I'm gonna let them all wear red or let them all wear green tomorrow because it's St. Patrick's Day. But they wouldn't wear green either because that's Medina, and we play them too. So like that's who I am. Like if we're in the weight room, we need to wear. If you're purple, you need to wear purple or a color similar to your school. It's continuity. I don't want to see you in here wearing red. Like they all think I hate red. Like no, I like it. You want to wear red so bad, we need to go up there with signs and pick it to the school that we want to change our school colors to red. Otherwise, you need to make peace with the fact that we're navy blue and white, and by God, that's what we're going to wear. That's just who we are. I think that's internal and being all in. I don't know. I'm a stickler for things like that, though, but that might be why I'm kind of odd.
I think the cool thing is, even as you were saying that, I kept going back to your all in statement earlier in the conversation. That's another one of those things where if you're in, it's those little detail things that I think is the other thing you're noticing. And that's something too that I've noticed with our teams is we'll win, but we don't dominate, I guess is maybe a thing. Like we'll crush for that first half. It'll get a little bit close and then we push it and then we win by whatever, like in basketball, we win by 10. When other teams are consistently winning by 20, 25, 30. And I think that for me is like that next step of it's cool to learn how to be successful, but now it's time to like you said, crush the mountain. Like we got to start doing this, not just going halfway up the mountain. Let's go the full way and make it where there's no question whatsoever what's going on
Right.
in our games. What were some of the things that you took away from the Notre Dame experience that you brought back to the high school? Or what were maybe some of the differences? Like, a lot of people think, oh, these are the best athletes. They're all 5-star, 4-star. They're freaks of nature. Do you run into the same kind of issues that you deal with at the high school level, and what things did you learn and take away from that experience?
Well, I mean, the first and foremost thing is, again, everything athletically in my eyes runs through the top-down approach. If the administration has a vision to be a high standard place, and then they hold the AD in charge of that, and the AD holds the coaches accountable to that, then everything else is going to trickle from there. At the college setting, you think about like at that Power 5 football setting, you got all these football coaches that get paid a pretty good amount of money, and most of them have GAs that get little to nothing, and that guy's hustling his butt off. And guess why? Because he's trying to get this guy's job.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy right here, he's on point. So when we go to practice, everybody's all in all the time. That's the standard. And if the big guy walks around, Coach Kelly comes in there and doesn't sees you like not coaching a guy through a line or doing the things that you're supposed to do the way you're supposed to do them, he's going to have a problem with that. If you go listen to anything that Saban talks about, which I'm like obsessed with Saban, he will tell you, you have to coach coaches sometimes. I've watched guys not coach a guy through the line. That's so you get what you tolerate. And so at that level, the intensity, and like I said, I've seen from being in Memphis and then going to being around the Memphis football program to going down to Alabama and seeing Alabama practice and watching Auburn practice with Coach Malzahn to being at Notre Dame. I can tell you Notre Dame had a very high standard, but like it didn't quite compare to the intensity level that it was at Alabama. So yeah, they got better athletes, sure, but their intensity level and the demand that's held to the way things are done in practice is almost like you feel like you didn't study for the test. I was just like a guy on the sideline watching, and I felt like, God, I need to know what's going on. I don't know. It was that intense. Like you can cut the tension with a knife. And so when that's your environment in practice, what do you think is going to happen when the lights come on? Those dudes don't flinch. They go after it. Well, the same, in the college setting, that's kind of the mentality of how you train them. When you come into that weight room, it's time to go to work, and everybody has a plan, and everybody's in a certain position, and the weights, we've already set the racks up, so they go right to work. We're saving time, and we're pushing them every day to get what we need out of them. We're not trying to crush them to see what they can handle, because the human body, you have to manage the CNS systems to get optimum performance. out of them. But like, you're going to get what you need out of them every day. Don't worry about that. And they have a duty to push each other as well. I mean, player-led teams are usually the teams that are the most successful. And you see that. You see the teams that don't push each other. So I would just say at that level, the difference is just everybody is really accountable to the process. Plus, if you don't do well, you don't have a job there. Mm-hmm. Where, like in the high school setting, how many people are calling your AD up saying, hey, I want to be Middletown's coach? Or how many people are calling Mason's football AD up saying, hey, I want to be your football coach? Like, are there a line of people out the door, like chomping at the bit to get your job? Like, maybe not. So you have to create your own demand for yourself. Because, like I said, what's your standard? What's the lowest that you could do and still have your job? Because at the college level, the lowest that you might can do, like Gus Malzahn beat Alabama last year. He got fired this year. You know what I mean? He had a winning record and he got fired. There's that, like that's the difference. Mm-hmm. People in high school don't usually go 8-3 in football and get fired. That's not a common thing. But I guarantee you, if that was a standard somewhere, that football program or that program would be really good, because people would coach like their life depended on it, or, it would have to matter to you that much. At least that's the way I would view it. So
it sounds like too that you went out and putting yourself on the sidelines at a Saban practice or Malzahn or whatever other things, those must have impacted you into how you like to run things now. Like that seemed to be when you saw it and you could see the intensity and you were like, dude, what is going on in this building right now? This is unreal. Like the ground is shaking with the intensity. And you're like, dude, if I can do this with the group, is that what kind of like just fueled you and said, hey, that's how I want to run things. I want to have that type of mentality.
Yeah, I would say in many ways. I mean, I grew up, I went to a high school called Wynn High School outside of Memphis, Tennessee. It's in Arkansas. My high school football coach is a Hall of Fame. He's in the Hall of Fame in Arkansas. We were a powerhouse football program. I mean, we were the Wynn Yellow Jackets, but the state had given us other nicknames. Like we were called the Beast in the East. We were known as the Delta Swarm because of how we played football. And, we used to have this sign put up. It said, loved by few. It said, loved by few, feared by many, respected by all. And that was like in our field house. And that was our mentality. And our coach would always say, and as a teenager, I was just kind of like, like I think I understood it, but it didn't like hit me in the chest like it would today if I said it. But he would say, win, W-Y-N-N-E. He would say, don't think because you got that win on your chest that they're going to go out there and lay down for you. So unpack that psychologically. Our coach knows that we're so confident in what we do that we think people are going to quit because they got to play us. That was the mentality. Like we didn't ever walk onto a football field and ever think anybody was going to touch us, like not even come close. Like we never felt that way. Plus our system was so like our football team ran the football. Our coach put the play on the back of a shirt and his license plate was 27 trap. You knew what we were going to do. I think the shirt even said, 27 trap, can you stop it? I mean, like that was our mentality. We were going to be hard-nosed. We were known to be a hard-hitting team in the state, and we were going to come right at you. And if you were going to beat us, you had to take it from us. And that didn't happen. And so when we didn't do as well as we should, he would use that. He would say that, like, don't think just because you got that win on your chest, they're not going to try to beat you. And it would almost, I guess it was intended for us to take it a little personal. Like, oh, okay, well, we'll show you. They think they're going to beat us. Well, we'll go see about that. So I think a part of that was like who I was. And then we didn't go into the year thinking conference championship, it would be cool. That was the expectation. The goal was to win a state title. That's what we talked about. That's what we wanted to do. And so I think that ingrained me as a person, no matter what I did, whatever job I took, that I wanted to be a part of the best of the best. And you have to understand why the best are the best are the best. And so through the course of like reading the various books, I kind of discerned that, when you read a book that wants to tell you about how to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
they're all kind of saying the same thing. If you read Mindsets by Carol Dweck, she says there's a how-to personality and there's a why not. All right. If you read How Successful People Win by Ben Stein, he's going to give you a lot of things about how you're supposed to do it. Like find people that do what you do. View things in the how-to rather than the why. I mean, they all kind of self-align with what you got to do. You got to put massive amounts of action into what your process is. So if you read these books and you pick up that they actually all overlap, they just all try to paint it in a different picture. And then you go look at guys like to me, I think you go look at the best. You read what Coach Wooden said, and then you follow what Coach Saban says, and you go, all right, well, they're constantly focused on how we need to do something. They're putting massive amounts of action in. They're holding everybody accountable to the standard, non-negotiable. And that's kind of what it is. The downfall is not most people want to put that kind of effort in, right? They like the ideal of being a champion, but they only want to go through the 6-step process of being a champion. They don't want to do the 12-step. So, and then sometimes in high school, what's sad is you get a team, like as a coach, you're like, I'm a 7-step coach. I'm always going to be that. Well, as a 7-step coach, you may just be average. And then 1 or 2 years in a row, you get this great class, right? And then that year, you can be a 7-step coach because you got this amazing talent and you get to go a little bit further. But in the years preceding that, you're kind of back to, because that's what high school kind of is. You kind of get these years with a lot of talent. Or if you do what I do really well, like you're developing them. So you take a below average kid and you make him average or above average, and then vice versa, if you're developing them the right way from the sports performance standpoint. So yeah, like being around those places that were successful, you start seeing, just like those books, oh man, this kind of aligns, right? So I guess that would be the way I would kind of explain that. And that's kind of what has driven me. I think there's just a way you do it,
It sounds like too that football coach and his mentality and what have you, was that one of the spurs that kind of like, at what point did you say, like, I want to get into strength and conditioning, I want to be coaching, I want to work with like young individuals and like you said, take them from below average to average or average to above average? Was that coach kind of maybe the guy that kind of was the spur that like, dude, I eat up what he's talking about, what he's building here, our mindset, I want to do that? Is that kind of where all of this started for you?
No, I don't know if I would say that's where it was. I mean, I was a quarterback and we ran the ball, so I probably had some pent up resentment there, to be quite candid with you. I just think that was, I mean, I always say this, and like if I'm in an interview or whatever, I will say, I'm gonna come in and try to kind of brainwash them. Like you have to that's what, when you think a cult, if you break it down, what do people do in cults that are not, when we're talking about people that are nuts, what are they doing? They're brainwashing them. They're just getting them to believe something that maybe they didn't believe in the beginning. Well, that's the same thing about driving your culture. You're trying to get them to believe that this is going to be our standard, So I think that we were kind of brainwashed, a little bit. We had a system and it was simple enough that we did it repetitiously over time and we were really good at it. And then they pushed us to be tough all the time. I mean, we're in small town Arkansas, Delta, Arkansas, where, we got mosquitoes bigger than most chihuahuas. And so if you ain't careful, that's just and it's hot, it's so like you deal with that every year. And so you had to be a little bit tougher, and we didn't come from much. So football and sports was kind of what we had. And I remember, like, I have a little brother and I would get out in the yard and I would coach him up on all the plays. And then we'd get all the kids in the neighborhood and we'd run our off. I mean, that was the thing about our culture too. It's like, I got 3rd and 4th and 5th grade kids in my yard running the diamond T, so we did it in 7th grade all the way up to 12th grade. But then you take your high school kids that are so obsessed with it and they go and teach their little brothers, like that was what we did in Wynne, Arkansas. And so I think just kind of coaching my little brother up and the kids in the neighborhood up, that was kind of maybe started to have a niche for it. And I was my own little bootleg strength coach to start. I was not just an average athlete, and I worked really hard, in the weight room, and I bought these various gadgets to I would run down the street in my neighborhood all the time with a wind chute or all this other little gimmicky stuff, but I was really consistent with it, and it made me a beyond average athlete. And then like when I was a cop, I was a cop for 4 years. I was the top of my class in the academy. I won the PT award. So I've always kind of been known for being a person where like physical fitness was my thing. It drove me a little bit more so than say the academic side of stuff. And when I left law enforcement, got into operation management and transportation, it was a little too you had like work in an office, and
Yeah.
that drove me nuts. Like, I leave it at that. So I got in. I just went and met with some schools in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's where it went. It went from there. And strength and conditioning was just something that I saw how a weight room was ran and went, hey, you know what? I could do. Let me give you some ideas. And I just took it, and I was all about it. So it was always like, you take that and you run with it. And one of the first rows I had, the guy gave it to me, and 5 days later, I had a 67-page manual. Now, I don't know if it was all that great, but I had it ready to go. I had a plan. That was the first opportunity, and I was going to come with a plan, and we were going to do it a certain way. And, that kind of took off from there. It's kind of really my niche, I would say. I just try to craft it every day when I get a chance.
If I were to have seen Coach Coley on that first time when you ran a weight room versus how you are now, what would be some of the differences? What were some of the maybe mistakes? Like, were there things you look back on and go, dude, that was a friggin' like train wreck?
Well, I've always been very organized. I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy, so it helped me to kind of take my thoughts and put them in the same lane, right? So I've always been very organized, and through my professions like law enforcement, you have to be on your stuff. You have to cross your T's and dot your I's. When you're in operation management and logistics, everything is 7 minutes ago. You could order a big shipment in Boston right now, and I'm going to get a call 5 minutes from now, and you could be sending it to LA. I can get a call 5 minutes. You're going to go, hey, is it there yet? You just ordered this. You're in Boston. No, it's not there yet. Like, that's that world, though. It's like this.
Yeah.
And things change all the time. So you have to go into the day with a list of stuff that you're going to get accomplished. And then if something happens, you break off, you fix it, you go back to your list. So I've always worked things that way. So that's what made me do the strength thing, was I was like, I could do this a little bit more. I could be organized in this process. So I always had an organized process. What I didn't do real well was I didn't always understand the science of like the energy systems. How do you train a team to have them be, I don't really love the word conditioning, but conditioned to do the sport to the demand that the sport needs to be done to be successful, right? A lot of people, they miss the fact that it has to be a high intensity sport, even like yours. If my guys are faster than your guys at the end of the game, I'm going to have a greater rate to win the game. I'm going to get to more balls, right? So when I was in Memphis, I used to run the heck out of them. I used to run them like that was the thing, and I was on them. I was a lot more people that know me now are going to go, what? I was probably more of a loose cannon then than I am now. And I was like on it. And but the thing too is I love the kids up too. Like, I'm just a big kid. I get along better, and this is candidly speaking, I get along better with the kids than I do most like adults. So that's just, that can be a virtue and a vice sometimes, but it's whatever for me. There's no happier moment in my day than just being in there with a bunch of teenagers that are just like, all right, whatever. Like they the stuff they say and the stuff they do, it just keeps you young.
Mm-hmm.
You just try to navigate that shit for them, so that way they don't get too far over here and crash into the rocks. But yeah, I think like just knowing the science of strength and conditioning, it's not, well, this is what we did when I was in school, so we're going to do this. That's the 7-step plan guy. He's sticking to what he knows. Science and strength and conditioning changes all the time. And it's all about what's the most efficient way to do it. And are we putting the kids in the right position? I start everything now from a postural standpoint, where I didn't then, right? I just focused on good form. Well, now I know a lot of good form is going to be negated if they have poor postural patterns. if they have internal rotations in the shoulder, if they let their arches collapse in their feet. We're going to have a chain effect ground up and bottom down. So I know that we're going to work on postural dysfunctions, and we're going to work on corrective patterns, which means weak points in the body, which are basically everything in the backside of your body. And then we're just going to teach them the 5 basic movement patterns. And that's going to be something that we ingrain in them, and we're going to take it through a process. So I think I'm a lot more systematic, but then I'm always, man, I change something up weekly because I read something, I look into it a little bit more, and then I go apply it. So I'm not rooted in anything that I do other than my mentality pieces. But I think just more systematic, 100%.
The one thing that I love too about what you've been talking about, and you just talked about it, like reading up on an article, you mentioned a couple of the books earlier about mindset and stuff. It sounds like you're constantly looking for that next little piece of information that you can gather, that you can use with your programs, that can maybe be that next thing to take it from a 7 to an 8 to a 9 to a 10 type of thing, which I think is awesome because you're constantly kind of learning as you go.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you have to, right? I mean, everything changes. And like I said, like, you could have the best system in the world, and just be pounding people left and right year after year. But at some point, if you're the mountain, because I'm also looking at one day being the mountain. If you're the mountain, guess what happens? Everybody's coming for the mountain. Mm-hmm. So at some point, somebody's going to know exactly what you're doing, and they're going to be able to counteract it. So if you keep doing what you've been doing, they're going to have something for you. If I could keep going in that weight room and I keep using 4 or 5 of the pieces that I use to build that mental toughness, and I don't change it up on them, my kids are going to adapt to that behavior. They're going to know when I do these 5 things, I know what I got to do to meet the standard. I know what I got to do to make sure everybody is like, yeah, that's what we wanted. But if I throw them a curveball, and I find new ways to throw them curveballs to be, improve that competitive nature or that toughness, then I'm always keeping that sword sharp, so to speak, the tip of that spear sharp. And so when I am the mountain, yeah, we're going to keep doing the same thing we've been doing, but just know we come in with just a little bit of juice this year. We're going to have just a little bit of different something that you didn't know about last year. And, every year when you train athletes and every year that you compete, you have to look at it as its own thing. It's not a continuation of last year. It's its own thing, and it has to have its own personality depending on what your teams need. So you have to be willing to change that process a little bit. So, yeah, I think you have to do that, right? I mean, otherwise you just kind of get stagnant, and what's the fun in that?
Right on. I completely agree. How long have you been at Solon?
Over a year.
So as you continue to move on, what are some of the things that you hope to kind of maybe see? Like, what does a 7 becoming an 8? Like, what does that improvement look like in your eyes? What kind of things do you go, okay, now we're getting it, type of thing?
Well, you look for little things. Like, I have that real particular way I keep the weight room, which is, like I did it at Middletown. They have to put the numbers up a certain way. And when you get to where your school understands that process, you're changing it. And that's adult down. Like, everybody goes, that's the way we want it done. Does it change whether we win games or not because we put a plate this way as opposed to this way? It don't. But it just says, we have a way that we're going to do it that's up here. That's what matters. And so the big thing that when you talk about changing from this level to leveling up to this level is, like I tell the kids all the time. I say, yeah, I have these finicky little rules about the weight room. I get it. And you may think it's stupid. I also get that. But the big thing is when we get done training at the end of the day, I need you to still be focused to finish the day. I need you to be focused with that very laser focus and attention to detail. So yeah, you're tired, but if I say, hey, go get everything back right, are you sitting there? And this is their thing that they still do here. Middletown did it really well. They picked up on it fast, and they were about it. And a lot of our kids at Solon have picked it up, but you still get it where you're done with the workout, and they don't immediately start trying to fix it. All right, it's over. Get it right. They'll stand around. You have to kind of tell them a couple more times, hey, go get it right. And I have a rule, like, If a 45-pound plate is not turned right, it's a reminder, because I don't believe in saying punishment. I believe in saying reminder. So reminder is 3 burpees. So I'm going to remind you that if we don't finish the day, if you make a big mistake, it's going to be a big penalty. So it's reminder times the weight. So reminder is 3 burpees. So if they turn a 45-pound plate the wrong way, it's 135 burpees. And then the same thing for like a 5. It's still 15. Kids hate burpees. I don't use them in any programming. We don't do them for any other reason other than they just hate them. And it's perfect. They hate them, and you can do them in a little small space. I don't got to take them out on the field or anything to do them. I don't have them hating running. I don't have them hate doing push-ups. I don't have them hate doing all the things that I want them to be able to do when they get older. If they never do a burpee for the rest of their life, it's not going to hurt their physical well-being. All right. As long as they're not afraid to go running because they didn't get ran all their life, so now they hate running. As long as I don't do that, I'm doing the right thing from the fitness standpoint or from the healthcare standpoint. But whenever you get your team to do 2 things in that part, you don't have to say anything, and they hold a high standard to putting it back. And then I tell them, do you put this weight room back because you don't want to do the burpees? Or do you put the weight room back because it matters to you that we do it better than other people do it? That's internal. So when your team starts to do things internally, you're winning the day. If your teams are only doing things externally because they're afraid that Coach Coley's going to blow his lid and, start telling you about how everything's jacked up like a box of coat hangers, that's a different story. We're not there yet. I remember one of the points when I knew that we were turning the corner at Middletown or starting to turn a corner was I was checking the weight room one day, and they were all excited because they wanted to get it right. So they were starting to be internal. And one of the weights was just slightly off, and I moved it. And nobody said and they just went like this. They just went, all right, like, you got me. We didn't hold the standard. Like, they took it. They were accountable to it, and I didn't have to say anything. They go, all right, and they just told each other, we got to do these burpees. They wanted it to be right because that's what they wanted. And then when they didn't do it right, they held themselves accountable to get it, to correct themselves. So you see that. And I get a lot of kids that Solon because they want it to be right, but you just wonder, do you want it to be right because it's a number to you and it's that academic thing we're like, or do you want it to be right because it matters? Because that at this school and this school and this school, they probably don't do what we are doing. So we're going to hold a higher standard. Which one is it? So I think that it's like that across the board, with anything else. And I'm just using that as an example. When we start, rooting for our teammates in the weight room and we start coaching our teammates up in practice, and it's an internal thing. I want my teammate to be better. You will see that. That's when you level up and you get to a different place. So that's the grind.
The thing that I love about what you just talked about was it wasn't that, all of a sudden we're winning conference championships in 3, 4 sports or whatever. It's those little things, like you said, we're preparing them for beyond the high school experience and moving forward. And they need to crush it in the workforce, or when they go to college or whatever it might be, as a dad or husband or whatever it would be. And I love the fact that you're looking at it's so many little detail things. And then the question that you keep kind of bringing up, that fork in the road, is, are you doing this because you're worried about the reminder that's about to come, or are you doing it because it's the right thing to do? It's the buy-in. It's part of the all-in type of thing. The other thing that I love is you have some awesome little metaphor, the single leg cat in a sandbox type thing, which I'm assuming is from your upbringing down in the South. How do the kids respond to these zingers that you throw out? I mean, that's just one that I've heard. I know I've heard a couple other ones, the coat hangers in a box and stuff like that, which I love.
I mean, everywhere I've been prior to Solon, kids would start saying them. And I don't always pick it up. I have that degree in philosophy. So I'm always, like you probably pick up, I try to put things in an analogy. I don't feel like I can always say what I want to say and make it clear and not get myself caught up. So I can give you an analogy of how I think it applies. And then in the South, we just, just what you get told. I mean, they just say things like that, like that's just, it's just how they talk. I don't know. It's just a common thing how you get raised up. Um, so it just comes out, especially in moments when you're kind of like, you're just flowing with it. So like the Solon kids laugh. If I catch it, like I'll say things and I don't always catch it, but if I catch it, like I'll say it and then I catch it. Usually they just kind of they do one of these. They kind of like look at each other like, where did this come from? And then they just laugh and then they go on. But I've also found like, when you have these weird personality quirks, especially as a coach, you keep their attention, and I have other personality quirks that may or not always be as funny, but like, you definitely keep their attention a little bit. And that's kind of the key, it's, are they hearing what you're saying? I see a lot of times when across different teams in sports where like you're talking to your team at the end of the day and their heads are down and their arms are crossed. Are they really hearing what you're saying? And if you're going to be long-winded like I can tend to be, how do you keep their attention? So, I mean, I think they adapt to it pretty well. I remember my kids in Memphis would always use them. I would be like, yeah, I mean, we just got to make sure we get this done because I don't want it. And I wouldn't even be able to finish my sentence. I don't want it. And there'd be like 3 kids go, look like a big bag of busted buttholes. We get it, coach. Like, all right, you got it. Let's go. Well, don't do that, Dan. Like they get it. It's kind of funny, like that they pick that stuff up. I've been lucky too. I haven't had any phone calls from like ADs or nothing that said, hey, mama said that Johnny came home and was saying, Mom, this looks like it's jacked up like a box of coat hangers. We'll be like, what are you talking about?
I think the cool thing about it too is it lets them see you as like you're this hard, like you have high expectations, you hold them accountable, you like things done a certain way, you're super energetic, your expectations are super high, but you're also like your unique own person. Like I think sometimes there's that disconnect between players and coaches where they only see you as this coach all the time and they don't. So when you have those unique sayings or whatever your other kind of things that you like to do, that lets you be unique and they get to see it because there's kids that you're working with that have their own unique kind of style of things. You, like you said, some groups are super hyper and other ones are very like straightforward and like, dude, just tell us what to do. We'll do it. We'll get in and out and we won't cause any trouble. And then you got other ones where you're like, dude, get over here and just focus for a second so I can tell you what you're going to do. And I think it's cool that they get to see you as like, that's who he is. And they get to appreciate it. And then it's cool for them to be like, okay, he's got some kind of like, he's very serious, but he's got some cool, unique characteristics also worked in there.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they're still kids. They're still teenagers. They're still figuring it out. They're not adults. I lose my mind and I hear it all the time where when you want to know why something's not where it needs to be, well, man, these kids nope, I'm done. I'm not listening no more. Like, you just said it. These kids, let's put a big box around the word kid. Like, you're the adult. Like, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there. Like I said, I'm just a big kid anyway. So maybe I'm missing something. But yeah, I don't know. I have fun with them too. Like I said, there are moments like when we're in the battle, we got to flick the switch and we got to go to work. I'm not here to baby you or hold your hand and play tiddlywinks. But outside of those moments, man, I joke with them. We talk crap to each other. I mean, I have a group at Solon I just started. It's something I've always intended to do wherever I've been, but it just takes time to pick, figure out what kids meet the standard. But I have this group called the Assassin Block. So I have all my blocks, all the teams training their select times, and then I select kids that I see that have this kind of this, if you ever read the book by Urban Meyer, Above the Line, and he talks about the 10-80-10 rule. Well, there are these kids that are kind of in that 10%. But again, here's my mindset. They're still kids. So you can call them the 10%, but they're still kids. So if you expect Johnny the 16-year-old starting quarterback to not go have a meltdown in the final 10 seconds of a game because he's the starting quarterback. If you haven't groomed him for that moment, that's on you. He's still a kid. So I take I take our team, our athletes that I feel are kind of have that different twitch to them. I don't have to tell them to put the weight room back. They will push their teammates. They seem to be selfless. They don't mind doing the hard stuff and trying to thrive at it. And then there is an element of just they're better athletes because they can move better. Like as a strength coaches understand when I say move better, they can hinge, they can squat, they can brace their core. You know, they keep their body in the right positions. They can pick up complex movements a little bit better. Well, because they are so far advanced, and it's just usually me kind of running the weight room and knowing what I know, whether there's coaching or not, those kids kind of can get the short end of the stick because they know what they know, and I'm over here working with Johnny who doesn't quite know what he knows. I'm trying to build that 80% up, and sometimes I get lost in that lower 10% because they're driving me like, what are you doing? Well, this 10% is losing the battle. So what I wanted to do is I think that I believe that great cultures are player driven. So I want to take a select amount of kids, and I'm going to put them in this very particular training block, which is 5:30 a.m. on Friday morning. And I picked that particular day at that particular time for a reason. I don't like training teenagers in the morning because they're not wired to be up that early. But Solon kids have persevered through it just because the different elements in Solon. But I picked 5:30 on Friday morning because that's kind of like the last day of the week. There's a sense of it's Friday, TGIF, right? No, not for this group. We're working. We're getting in the weight room at 5 in the morning, and we're going to go to work. And we're not just going to do easy peasy stuff. We're going to do some pretty challenging, some pretty advanced stuff for them that they can do. And then I do it with them. Whatever they do, I do. I'm a firm believer. If I have them do a really hard workout, I've already done it. I just believe that. You know, it's like being a pastor, but you don't go to church. You're going to preach something, but you ain't never going to show up. I'm going to do it. And they're going to see me, you know, fail, and they're going to push me. And I have no problem with them doing that. Like, I have no problem with that. They'll hold me accountable. That's totally fine too. That's what I expect. It raises my standard just like it raises theirs. But this group is designed to really, I'm gonna give them something every day, motivational. I'm gonna watch a video or whatever. And we're gonna talk about something a little bit deeper than just your general leadership stuff. And then the goal is that they will go out to their team and they'll drive the culture, and they'll drive the team to be player led, and they'll teach other kids how to speak up, because that was a big thing. Solon kids wouldn't always speak up when something's not the way. And then through some of the works that we've done and saying, look, if you don't think that's the way it needs to be, you need to say something. I'm not saying be a jerk, but you can't allow something that's wrong to continue to be wrong and just be a part of that process. That's what happens to our society. We let a lot of things that are wrong go on, and then now it boils over, and now it's chaos. Well, if we'd have just spoke up in the first place, and I tell kids too, I say, the reason I have this group is I don't want just one kid on one team. I want 4 or 5 kids on each team, because if I speak up and you're on my team, and then you speak up with me and the next kid speaks up with us, now there's 3 of us. And that's how, like, I remember watching this thing on Facebook one time where, like, it was like this, I don't know, like a festival or something. And these people were all outside and there was music playing and nobody was dancing. Well, like, one person goes and dances, and then another one goes and dances. All right, well, now 3 more come and dance. It's like you need 2 or 3 people to start the trend, and then everybody's going to follow, because peer pressure is, you know what? So we need 2 or 3 people on each team to drive 3 more people. And if you can get 6 people speaking up, saying the same message, the same way, holding the same standard, and teenagers can do that, then you're going to get that whole team connected. So I've been running this group, just started it last week, you know, so that kind of help drive that culture from the bottom up. Meaning, your school should do it top down, well, you also can do it bottom up. You can take your kids and you can drive it. Like at Middletown, you can pick your top 30 kids across the sports and train them individually and say, go back into your teams and hold them accountable. And this is how you do it. And don't be afraid. If you hurt somebody's feelings, just don't be a jerk. You know, just tell them, I'm doing this because I want you to be better. I want us to be better. and kids love it. I get all these kids that message me and want to be in the group, but you got to earn it. It's not really given.
I think the cool thing about it, so one, you're planting the seeds and then you're allowing it to grow, which is through the kids. It's not me like saying, hey, when you go to practice, they're learning what leadership looks like, what putting it in. And the other thing, which you just mentioned, because I was wondering, like, if I'm not in that 530 group, now that's kind of a carrot for me. Like, wait a minute, I want to be in that mix with those guys. I want to see what Coach Coley's like when he's doing a workout. I want to be part of that leadership kind of group, which you just talked about. Now, all of a sudden, that 10% or that 80% starts to raise up a little bit. Like they're seeing what they're doing. So, but not even by them being in the mix and saying stuff or doing it, just by them going on 5:30 on Friday, like, they're putting that on Snapchat and they're sharing with their buddies like, dude, I don't know what you guys are doing at 5:30, probably sleeping. I was putting in work.
Yeah.
And like they know they're looking, which I think is awesome. I love the idea.
They also have to wear, one of the things, like I said, we all have to wear, like, I always make them wear white or gray or navy shirts. Well, this particular group wears black, all black. That's what they got to wear. They got to wear all black. If you show up without all black on, I send you home. It's just little nitpicky things. So like it's funny how like you give kids something like that to be a part of, and then how many kids that I've had come to me and go, like one of our girls, she's phenomenal. She was telling me her little boo thing, whatever. I was like asking her about something, and she goes, "Yeah, he keeps telling me he wants to be in the assassin block. He wants to be in there so bad." I'm like, "Well," she said, "He told me he's working really hard, but it's hard." Like it's funny, like hearing like multiple kids tell me like their friend wants to be in it. What do they need to do? And I'm like, but that's a Solon kid thing. Like, oh, it's an AP class. I need to be in that AP class. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? So that's the perk to their personalities is, oh wait, there's a double AP class. Oh, I want to be in that. They're kind of wired a little funny, which is good. They're wired to be elite. You just have to cultivate it, a little bit.
Which goes back to what I said earlier about like your comments about the Memphis kids, the Middletown. Like you clearly understand what they need, what things kind of will trigger them to be like, oh, dude, I might be able to push that next level, type of thing. And I'm freaking hyped right now. Like I just want to leave and go to the gym right now and just replay this whole conversation. If people want to follow up with you, because this is so cool, and want to see what's going on with Solon and with you and what have you, what are some great ways, or what's the best way to kind of connect and continue maybe this conversation?
Well, like I talked to Coach Lewis at Oak Hill. He just messaged me on I call it the tweeter. So Coach Foltz.
Yes.
Cross country. He would say when I was there, he would always go, "I don't do the tweeter," and I always thought that was so funny. So that's what I say now. I stole that from him. I go the tweeter. So the kids leave me fun. So I guess the tweeter is one of them. And then I created a web page on our Solon strength and condition, or on our Solon athletic website. So there's a strength and conditioning page that I put a video up for the past few months of just some, we made a lot of improvement strength wise. And, so I put some of that stuff up. I run a thing every week called the toughest comment of the week, because I'm driving toughness into the culture. So I put a video up to show that. I would just say reach out via like I would say the Twitter might be the best way to do it. That's the easiest for me. I check it every once in a while because I only use it for the purpose of, strength and conditioning, kind of semi-promote our teams. I don't try to put a ton of stuff on there. It's not my style. I don't put myself on there a lot, but it's just not my style. But I do check it quite often and try to use that forum. That's, you want, the kids, that's what they do. You gotta do the tweeter, and I don't do the gram. I ain't on the gram, but
on the gram or the tweeter. But on the tweeter. So I'll put his his Twitter name, username on there. I'll also share the website, so people can go and check that stuff out, and what have you. But my other little question before I sign off with you is, So you're at Solon, you're building, it sounds like you're doing awesome things there. Is there a ultimate level that you want to get to? Is there somewhere that like, or are you just like, dude, wherever I end up, like right now, I'm happy where my feet are. I'm going to crush it here. And if something comes across the board, I'll look at it, but I'm not like, if is Alabama like the ultimate goal would be working with Saban be the dream, or is high school
Well,
kind of your niche?
well, I think, well, like you said before, I think anywhere you go, as long as you understand empathy, like if you understand how to be empathetic towards people and see what the scenario needs, that's what I feel like I do relatively well. I can go into each school and see what they need, and then that's what I drive cultural wise to get. I still want to be the mountain, but I got to start it in a different way. I mean, to me, I am 100%. I want to be the best. I want to be challenged to be the best. I want to be the guy that if I'm your strength coach and you don't win the state title and you 100% believe we didn't have a physically prepared team, I want you to come to me and say, Coach, I don't think we did a good enough job strength training, which I'm probably going to have I would have a process and I'd explain to you why we're doing what we're doing, when we're doing it. And that might not always have been the case, but I'm just saying, I want to be held accountable. I kind of like the idea that I could be fired if we don't win. That motivates me because that means that everybody's going to give all they got all the time. So I really just am driven to be around cultures like that. I mean, I'm obsessed with Saban, so that's a whole nother, like you're asking, like if I want to go hang out and eat dinner with Jesus or something, like it's, I mean, if that guy wanted me to like, if that guy that holds his cup of water on the sideline like retired and he needed a new guy to hold his cup of water for him, I'd probably come do that.
You could be the guy that stands behind him and pulls him
Yeah,
back
just holds his
onto the
water. I
sideline.
just I just feel like you get a ton of information just from just being around him, just the knowledge that he has. But I don't know. I mean, I think wherever I go, I just want to be challenged. I don't want to be around a lot of mediocre mentalities. Mediocre people don't like high achievers, or high achievers don't like mediocre people. That's what he would always say. So I'm going to level up to where I'm at. So if there's a lot of mediocrity, I'm going to still hold my standard, but it starts to get old and frustrating after a while. So I think, everywhere you go, you can drive that standard. But for me, that's all it is. I'm not really too far. I don't look into tomorrow. I look at right now, and that's all that really matters. And so hopefully, I stay being challenged because I can tell you these kids definitely will challenge you.
This conversation has been so awesome. I've loved kind of picking away at your brain and in your thought process and stuff. And I can tell the energy and all that stuff I've loved. So I appreciate you being on with me on the podcast. I'm going to shut it down. This is Karen, Coach's Corner Chats with Cody Coley. I'm out. Peace.